Hello, and welcome to Model a Guitar in 3ds Max. In this video, we're going to be walking through how to model a guitar in the program. First things first, we're going to need to bring a picture of a guitar into 3ds Max to use as a reference for our model. So as we can see, I have a picture here, and opening it, it's a nice picture of a guitar. Now, in 3ds Max, if you are to use a shape and put a picture on it, the picture will stretch with the shape. So we need to look at how big the picture is so we can create a shape with the proper ratio in order to have it not stretch out. To do that, I'm going to right-click on my picture, and I'm going to choose the Properties button at the bottom. On the Details tab, I can see that my dimensions for the picture are 550 by 1100 pixels. So I'm going to take the zeros off the end of that and make a plane with the size 55 by 110. So, back in 3ds Max, I will go to my Object panel, make a plane, and then in the Modify, I will make it 55 by 110. Next, I can go up to my Material Editor, make sure that the mode it is in is the Compact Material Editor. Then I will choose an empty material, go down to the Base Color area, click on this small box here, and in the menu that opens, I can choose Bitmap Lookup and click OK, and find my picture. Mine's in the same folder as my project, so I'll click on it, click Open, and I can click and drag this material onto the plane that I made. Now, I want to make a 3D model of this guitar, so what I'm going to do is grab a box and make a box that is a similar size to the body of the guitar. Then make it 10 units high, and start using the Move and Scale tools to line it up with the outside edges of the guitar picture. It'll take a little bit of working, moving it over, scaling it. And after a little bit of work, we've got it to line up nicely with the outside of these curves. You see on all four sides, it lines up with the edge of the body. Our next step then is to add some segments. So in the Modify panel, I've added 10 and 20 segments. Those numbers are good. I'm going to turn on Edged Faces now so I can see those segments. And to make it easier to see, I'm going to change the color to one where the white shows up a bit better. Now with those segments in, I can use Edit Poly to go ahead and change the shape of the guitar so that it matches the picture. So in the Modify panel, I will find my Edit Poly, and you can see it has applied up in the little window up here. I'll choose the vertexes, and then using the Scale tool, I can drag and select the vertexes in a line or a row, and resize them smaller to make the row smaller. I'm going to start at the bottom of my guitar body and move all the way up to the top. You may end up needing to go back and taking a second look at a line if it didn't work quite right for you. And after a bit of time, you can get to the top of the guitar and we can start to see that guitar shape taking place. My next step is to make the neck of the guitar, as well as the head. To do that, we're going to use the Polygon tool, and we're going to start to select 4 polygons on the front of the guitar, holding Control to select multiple. Once we've got them selected, we'll go down to where the extrude settings are, And we're going to pop it out a small bit, and we're going to do that twice. So about 0.5. And click the check mark, and then we'll do another 0.5. What that'll do is give us the opportunity to go off of that top layer there and have a little bit of space underneath, just like a real guitar has. So once we are ready to do that, we'll use the polygon tool again, and holding Control, we'll click on all 4 of the upper polygons. And using the extrude settings box, we're going to extrude them all the way up to the top of the head. So pan up, make sure that you're close, and click the check mark to lock that in. As you can see, that small gap underneath the neck, between the neck and the body, has been made. My next step is going to be to create the fretboard on the guitar. Now, the fretboard is the small metal lines that create sound when you play a guitar. To make that happen, I'm going to press Alt-1 to create the segment making tool. See the green line there. And I'm going to click once and then twice to create a segment for each fret. So you can see the lines a small amount apart, all the way up the neck of the guitar. As they go up the guitar, they spread out a little bit. So you may want to pan up the neck of the guitar to make sure you're getting an accurate placement for them. Once I get to the top, I'm going to make a last one where the white band is, where the head connects to the fretboard. Now, a fret on a guitar has a little bit of an extrusion, so you guessed it, we're going to use the extrude tool again. Holding Control, we can select multiple of our segments, and we're going to extrude them a small amount, not a lot. The check mark to lock them in, and once again, we're going to go all the way up the guitar, adding these extrusions. Now, if you happen to accidentally pick the wrong segment, you can hold Alt and Control, click on it again to deselect it. I'm going to finish extruding all of these frets. On the last set there at the top, the white band, I'm going to do a bit bigger of an extrusion because that part of a guitar is extruded a bit more. So we'll do that. Once we're done the fretboard, our next step is to make the tuning pegs on the outside of the head. To do that, we're going to once again create segments using Alt-1 to create the green line, and make segments big enough to extrude the post from the side of the guitar. Press Alt-1 again to turn it off, and then we're going to go to the polygon tool in the Edit Poly, click on one of our new segments, and extrude it out about the same amount as the handle does from the side of the guitar in our reference picture. Then we can go all the way around the guitar, doing the same thing for each peg. Now, each of these handles has little wings coming off of each side. So once again, turning on Alt-1, our segment creator. On each one of these handles, we're going to create a new segment from which we can extrude the wings of our handle. Going back to the polygon tool and to turning off that Alt-1. And to the side there, we can extrude it out. Clicking the check mark. And I'm going to go all the way around here and do that. So a bit of a skip. Finish up the last one here. Now on the guitar, the center of these little handles are all a little bit wider than the edges. So going back to our vertexes, just like we did down on the body, we can select each one of these vertexes, and with the move tool, we can move it up a bit, and then on the bottom of the handle, using the same move tool, selecting all four, we can move them down a bit to create that bulge of a handle. If you want to do it a different way, you can also drag select. It'll get the top and the bottom, and use the scale tool like we did at the bottom of the guitar to stretch it out a bit. Do a small skip here to the last one. So once again, we can use the move or the scale tool to make this work. Just be careful not to grab vertexes from a different part of the guitar. Next, we want to look at the neck of the guitar. And the neck of a guitar tapers as it gets closer to the top, whereas ours is currently straight. So what we're going to do in our guitar, be on vertex mode here, and I'm going to drag and select all of the vertices down to the second row of them on the neck, all the way from the very first row below the knobs. Then I'll use the resize tool and make some very small adjustment to make all of these ones that I've selected a small bit smaller than the bottom one. Then, holding down Control and Alt, I'll deselect the lowest row and repeat this process up the guitar. Holding Control and Alt to drag and deselect the next row and make it progressively skinnier as it goes up towards the top. You want to do small movements through here, as if you do a bunch of large movements, you will run out of width to play with. And we can repeat this process all the way up the neck of the guitar, holding Control and Alt to deselect the points and move them in. The rest of them in until we reach the top. Now the neck has a bit of a taper, but it still flares out into the full-sized guitar head at the top. Next, I want to move back down in the guitar. I'm going to look at creating the hole in the center. This can be a little bit difficult, but the way that we're going to do it in this tutorial is we're going to start by grabbing the polygon selector. Now you see I've done this already, but we're going to select a 4x4 grid of polygons, leaving one between here and the start of the neck, between the selection and the start of the neck. Once we have those 16 squares selected, I'm going to press the delete key to remove them. Now that we have the hole, we want to make it round. So we're done with the polygon, we're going to move over to the vertexes and use the move tool. Making a circle out of these points could be pretty difficult. The way that I found works best is to grab a corner, and you can move it directly centered on its two neighboring points, and do that for all 4 of the corners. And then we'll follow the same process for the other 8 points beside the corners, putting them between the corner we just moved and its nearest side piece directly in the middle. The reason why we're not using a pro boolean for this is it creates problems down the road for us trying to do other edits, and it also would not create a hollow space like a real guitar has, but it would instead create a filled-in space, which is not quite what we're looking for. So we'll finish lining up all of these points so that they're centered against their corner and their nearest side. We can click off of those vertices, and we can see we've made a pretty convincing circle in the center of the guitar. After that, we're going to look at the bridge of the guitar. The bridge of a guitar is this piece down here where the strings connect to the body. So we'll be creating first this little piece of wood here, and then the piece of plastic that they run up against, or maybe wood on an expensive guitar, and lastly the pins. To start, we're going to grab, again, our shape, use the Edit Poly polygons, and I'm going to grab 4 polygons across, and I want to extrude them up a small bit. That's pretty good. Play with this a little bit to your liking. I'm going to put it around 1, and that's the beginning of our bridge. If you notice in our picture, our reference picture, it slopes down a little bit off of the middle. So we can do that next. I'm going to grab the edge, click on the edge on the outside of the guitar, and I can slide that down a little bit to match that sloping, and do the same on this side to give us a piece that looks similar to the reference picture. Now, I want to look at this white bar that goes across where the strings rest. We don't have a polygon here that we can do that with. So we're going to create another one. Again, we're going to use the Alt-1 that we used earlier. That will give us the ability to create new lines. And then we're going to create one line here and another line right beside it. And if we click out of Alt-1, that gives us 2 lines here that we can then do things with. Another set of polygons as well. And by selecting both of those polygons and extruding them up a little bit, and go about 0.5, we can create that bar. So we can see the bridge slopes down on the sides and has a bar extruded up, just like in our reference picture. The next detail we're going to put in is the pegs which the strings connect to on both the top and the bottom of the guitar. So going down here, we're going to, for the first time, create a new shape. We're going to create a sphere. If I turn on Auto Grid, I can create the sphere directly on my shape, and then I'll know what size it is, and I'll know that it's exactly where I want it. I can move it around to get a nice spot, and if I'm not quite happy with how big it is, which I'm not, I can change its radius to about 0.3. That seems pretty good. Then I'm going to duplicate it across. So I'll hold down Shift and move it, and I can create 5 copies of it. Because guitars have 6 strings, then I'll line these up so that they are symmetrical. Got the 6 pegs down at the bottom, and we need to make our pegs also up at the top. These pegs are going to line up with our tuning handles, so we can make another set of spheres. So back into our new panel, and we can make, with Auto Grid on, our spheres right on the guitar. And I'll modify them to get them about 0.3, same as the ones on the bottom. I'm going to hold Shift, slide it across to duplicate it that way, just the one. And then I'm going to hold down Control, grab them both, and I'll duplicate them upwards as well, together, and create 2. Now I have all 6 of them, and I'm just going to move these 2 around a little bit. And there they are. We have our pegs on the bottom and on the top, just like our guitar has in the picture. Now our last step is going to be to build our strings. What we're going to do is rotate down so that we can see the pegs just over this part of the bridge. Using a cylinder and with auto grid on, I'm going to draw a very small string using a cylinder and have it come out a little bit from that bridge. Then I want to line it up as close as I can to the peg, slide it up so that it's on top of the bridge, and over to the bridge itself. Then I'll grab the scale tool and I'll make it reach the length of the guitar. I can zoom out and really stretch it out. I want it to go until about this point. Then I can grab the Move tool and hold Shift to duplicate that string over and make 5 copies. Then I'll line them all up with their respective pegs, although these ones look pretty good. And we can see we have our 6 strings going all the way down the guitar, ending up here. Now, as you can see, these strings don't necessarily line up along the neck. So we need to rotate them a small bit to get them to line up properly. If we click on the string, we can use the blue or Z rotation axis to rotate them so that they line up. It's very small numbers and this can get frustrating. So a better way to do it I found is to click on them and to edit the numbers down below to get your desired result. Something like that for that one. And I'll go across and do all of mine. Some of them are going to need to move positive direction, others will need to move negative. But you can use these numbers down here to make your time rotating these a little bit easier. I'll skip ahead to when and here we can see they're all nicely now rotated up to the top of the guitar. Now our final step is going to be to connect our strings up here to our pegs. If we look at our picture of a guitar, we can see where they go. So the outside strings go to the bottom pegs, and as they go further in, they end up further up on the guitar as well. So we'll start with one string, and you can do the rest on your own. Clicking on the cylinder here, we're going to create a new cylinder using auto grid on our sphere. And we can have it point as close as we can towards our existing cylinder, existing string, and then we can rotate it down to more accurately point towards it off of that sphere. That looks pretty good. You can play with it a bit. The important part that we need to look at here is that we want these strings to be the same width. So if we go into our modify panel for our existing string, we can see that it is 0.041 radius, this number here. And we'll make this one match. That number isn't important. What's important is that they both match each other. Now I can go into my string and add an edit poly to it. Scrolling down, pressing the attach button, I can select the other wire to turn them into one shape. Lastly, I click the polygon. I can grab the face at the end of my wire and the face at the end of this wire, holding down Control. They're both selected. And if I press the bridge settings, it will bridge these two wires together. You may end up with a twist in your wire. You can control that here with this and this, getting them to line up nicely. Click the check mark when you're happy, and we can see that these wires are now connected via this bridge we just put in, connected to the peg, and run all the way down the guitar. You can follow these same steps to do all 6 of our strings, connecting them both to the peg and to the rest of the string. And that brings us to the end of the tutorial. You can now go beyond this tutorial to add other details that may not have been added in the video. You can improve on some of the designs or add your own effects that you think make it look better. Thanks for watching.